Cinemassacre's Monster Madness.
As I said before, to mix in with my Halloween festivities this month, I'm taking a look at some of the newest horror films that are streaming, rather than just looking at old stuff. This is fun for me because it gives me the perfect excuse to check out the freshest, most raw, blood-dripping horror to chow down on. Today we're talking about a YouTuber in a haunted house who's doing a live stream, except it turns into a Deadstream. It just came out on Shudder, I just watched it, and here's what I think. Since Deadstream is a film that's brand new, I'm not gonna give away any spoilers, but I can give you the main gist. It's about a YouTuber or content creator, whichever phrase you'd like, named Sean Ruddy, played by Joseph Winter, who also writes and directs along with Vanessa Winter. I'm not aware if he's based on any actual YouTuber, but he seems like somebody who might exist in some form. This guy has the type of channel that's centered around stunts, pranks, or dumb challenges. It opens with a brief, humorous montage that fills you in very quickly. I was laughing all the way through it because of how it makes fun of that kind of content. One of the things he does is put himself in a raft down a river, calling it the Baby Moses Challenge. He's wrapped in a blanket with a pacifier in his mouth and a GoPro on his head. It's the stupidest thing. Then he throws stuff at police officers, yells and insults them to make them chase him, which of course does not go well at all. He's the type of guy who craves attention at any cost. He gets himself into a lot of trouble. He does some things that are insensitive, even hurts some people. He's the kind of guy who would stoop as low as possible to get views, but it catches up with him. He gets canceled, then he lays low for a while, but then he plans a comeback with a live video where he spends the night in a haunted house. But if he wanted to do something really scary, something that would be a real torturous challenge, he should play The Last Ninja on NES, because he has a stack of NES games in the background. So anyway, the haunted house thing is the main plot, and it feels very familiar. It's the classic trope. It's House on Haunted Hill. See if you can last the whole night in the house. So he locks himself in, he sets up a bunch of GoPros all over the place, and as he explores each of the rooms, he tells you all about the history behind the house, sometimes flashing back to old VHS footage. Just a little fun fact, one of those scenes shows some paranormal investigators who are using a little girl to help them find the spirits. It's shot on one of those old camcorders that has the date on the screen, and of all the dates they could have chosen, just so happens to be my 18th birthday. So I'll say it now, this is one of those movies where I think the setup is the best part. Going into the house is where all the tension is built. I think that's usually the case, where once the monster or the ghost or whatever shows up, the suspense is gone, and now we move into another area of the film. The same goes for Alien, in my opinion. I think the discovery of the spacecraft and the alien eggs and all that was the best part. But that's not to say the rest isn't any good. Deadstream still delivers. I won't give specifics or ruin anything, but you're in for a good time. I think this is a movie that you should definitely watch at night in the dark. You want to subject yourself to it because it has a lot of POV shots that could make you feel like you're really there. The tone is comedy and satire, but it does have some scares and gore too. The gore is well done. It's not full Evil Dead crazy, but it's over the top. A little gross, a little fun. It does have quite a bit of jump scares, but doesn't rely on them too heavily. It is a found footage film. I know that kind of thing can be hit or miss. Some feel the found footage genre has been done to death, but this is one that pulls it off pretty well and doesn't take itself too seriously. I'll always remember seeing The Blair Witch in theaters, and it was a huge deal to see something like that on the big screen. A theatrical film that looks like it could have been shot on a home camcorder. Deadstream is a lot like that. Production-wise, it looks fairly simple as far as horror films go. It looks like they just found some old abandoned house and just went in and filmed it. There's some effects along the way, some are a little funny and cheesy, and some are pretty creepy. For me, I find the most appealing part is just exploring the house. It reminds me of my younger days running around the Pine Barrens looking for abandoned places to film. I was always a big fan of Weird New Jersey magazines. To this day, I have all of them. They're all about weird stuff in general, but there's a lot of abandoned places. Those familiar with it might remember Demon's Alley, the Marlboro Slaughterhouse, places like those. I remember one time I found a drive-in theater that was abandoned at the time. The screen was still there. There was a projection booth and bathroom stalls. Everything was deteriorating. There was graffiti on the walls. I always loved that stuff. So watching the movie reminded me of that and how there's so many YouTube channels that explore places like that. So this movie made me want to watch more of those type of videos. It's almost like this is the horror film version of that. Like, what could go wrong? Let's see a dramatic, fictionalized version of it. The acting is done with a certain style and a certain choice. Sean is a pretty hyper guy to begin with, a loud personality, so when he's confronted by the type of stuff that happens in the house, he screams and cries and reacts in a way that I would normally say this acting is really bad. There's no subtlety, but in the context, it makes sense. He's live streaming for his viewers and is in full performance mode. He never stops. He never dials it down. It makes me wonder, as a YouTuber, what would I do in this situation? It's hard to imagine because I don't do anything like him. I'm not a stunt guy. The closest I think I might have done was the Polybius episode, which was in a found footage style, but of course it's all fiction. But to imagine, if you were a YouTuber who was actually going into a haunted house, live streaming it, how would it play out? Because you want to suspend your disbelief, and there's parts where I'm watching and I'm thinking, okay, that's probably not how it would go. I wouldn't keep talking to the camera while that's happening or whatever. But there's certain aspects that enhance your enjoyability because there's a somewhat relatability factor. Now, Sean is not a character who you root for. He's not a likable character in any way. You want to see him get what he deserves. It's the common trope. Maybe goes back to Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. He's a flawed human being who's visited by ghosts who make him into a better person. So you are hoping for some kind of character arc to happen here, and it delivers on that fairly well. Earlier on, sometime after he enters the house, he's joined by a supporting character who's named Chrissy, who's an obsessed fan who anticipated his live stream and showed up at the same place to meet him. She's played by Melanie Stone, who also appears in VHS 99, which is also coming to Shudder pretty soon. Her performance is also rather specific. Kind of a creepy stalker vibe, kind of suspicious. By the look in her eyes, you get the impression she's up to no good. Well, I don't want to say a whole lot more about this film because I don't want to give too much away, but you get the idea, you get the premise, and if you haven't seen it but are wondering if you'll like the found footage aspect or not, I say it's worth seeing. I enjoyed it overall. It mixes horror and humor pretty well. There's some scares and laughs to balance it out. But I do feel there's some extra potential that might have been missed because found footage films started as kind of a gimmick before it became a whole genre. Remember when Blair Witch came out? Some of us thought it was real. That was the rumor floating around and what created the lore and the hype. They could have gone all the way. Create a YouTube personality, release a bunch of those stunt videos, which would all be staged, build up the channel first, and then do Deadstream and actually air it as a real live stream. There's much more they could have done with this, I think. Just run with the idea. The whole setup of the live streamer going into the abandoned house is something that's already so similar to things that have actually been done. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to fool us, even if just for a little bit, just enough to get us watching before we realize it's fiction. Found footage used to be a gimmick, and I think this movie just needed a little more gimmick. And just one little weird thing. The end credits have an 80s style text with VHS static and synth music. I don't get it. I know everybody loves the 80s so damn much, but this movie doesn't take place in the 80s. Why did they do that? I think the 80s style is being overused in places where it doesn't need to be. But anyway, I enjoyed the film. Check it out. Turn off the lights, tune into the Deadstream, and don't forget to smash, literally smash that like and subscribe button. Which I'm not asking. But you could if you want.